Welcome to Beyond Hormones, the Business of Wellness, the podcast for hormone and functional medicine providers who want a thriving, predictably profitable practice and maybe a little less stress along the way. Hi, I'm your host, Jody Layne, and I've worked with lots of clinics in marketing, sales, and business development, and I have seen what works and what doesn't. And here's what I believe. Hormone and wellness care should be available to everyone who wants it. And while providers know the medicine, many struggle with the business side of their cash practice. And that's where I come in. See, this podcast is here to share real strategies, real stories, things you can implement in your practice right away. So I am so glad you're here. Come on, let's go. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Beyond Hormones, the Business of Wellness podcast. I am your host, Jody Layne, and this is the third episode in our Power series, where we're breaking down the 5 pillars that help hormone and wellness clinics grow in a way that is predictable and sustainable. Now, in the last episode, we talked about the first pillar, positioning, and why it determines who you attract, how patients perceive your value, and whether your pricing supports the business you're trying to build. Now, today, we're moving to the second pillar of the Power Framework, operations. Now, operations is interesting because most providers and business owners already understand that operations matter, right? This isn't a brand new concept. Most clinics think about operations even before they open their doors. I mean, you set up an EMR, right? You've got some sort of an email delivery system. You might have an internal communication system so staff can talk to each other, and you might even have a CRM, customer relationship management software, to capture leads. Or maybe you're tracking leads in Google Sheets. And all of that is important. But there's one piece of operations that gets missed all the time, and it's the piece that turns operations from something you do into something that actually propels your clinic forward. And that piece is documenting your processes. Let me describe how operations usually evolves in a clinic. A clinic starts small. There's 1 or 2 people in the office, often including the provider, and everybody does everything. Everyone knows what needs to be done because they helped build the system. If something breaks, they just fix it. If something needs improvement, they just make a change. Everything works because the team is small and communication is constant. When the clinic grows, new people are hired, right? The original team trains the new team. Then the clinic grows again. And now those newer people are training the new wave of employees. Those new hires bring their own experience. They bring ideas for improvement. And usually those ideas come from a pretty good place. People want to make things better. But suddenly, something starts happening. Different people are doing things different ways. And that's when problems start. Patients get inconsistent experiences. Staff gets confused. Mistakes start happening. And what used to feel like a smooth clinic suddenly feels chaotic. Now, this is where standard operating procedures come in. Now, you probably just rolled your eyes, but when your clinic is small, that is actually the best time to build your operational systems. And if you're hearing this and your clinic is already larger, that's okay too. You can still start today. The goal is simple. Sit down and think through every process in your clinic. And I mean everything. What happens when someone calls the clinic for the first time? How does the front desk answer the phone? How are consultations and follow-ups scheduled? How do patients check in? How are lab orders placed? How are lab orders entered into the EMR? How do patients enroll in treatment plans? How are prescriptions refilled? Am I getting to the point? Every single step. Then write it down. And write it down as if you're training a 3rd grader, step by step by step. That becomes your standard operating procedure. Now, one of the biggest mistakes I see clinics make is trying to jump straight to a fancy tool. They want a platform that stores their SOPs, creates training videos, builds quizzes, automates onboarding. And you know what? Those tools are great. And if you have the time and resources to use them, then go for it. But that is not where you start. Where you start is a Word document or a Google Doc. You simply sit down and do the work. Because once the work is done, moving it into a better system later becomes easy. But without the work, the tool does absolutely nothing for you. Let me give you an example of something I saw happen in a clinic. The provider had extremely high standards. Every time something broke or a patient issue occurred, you know what she would do? She would look for ways to improve the process. And at first glance, that sounds great. Why wouldn't you want to keep improving your clinic? But here was the problem. She would make changes constantly, and those changes weren't documented anywhere. Staff would receive post-it notes with new instructions. Processes would change in the moment. And even though the team was incredibly capable, they couldn't keep up. A high-performing team turned into a chaotic one. And the reason it happened was actually just the provider's desire to improve the clinic. That's why documenting processes is only phase one. Phase two is having a system for how changes are made. Let me give you a real simple system to use. First, create a document that contains all of your operating procedures. Once that exists, create a second document called something like improvements or issues or process ideas. Everyone in the clinic should have access to that document. Instead of making changes immediately, team members add their ideas to that list, even the founder, even the provider. Then you decide when to review it. Maybe it's a weekly meeting, maybe you do it monthly, maybe you do it quarterly. But either way, you review the list and together decide what to do with each idea. Now, in the clinic that I ran in Orlando, we used a system that came directly from the book Traction by Gino Wickman, one of my all-time favorite business books. We had a document on Google Drive called the Issues List. Everyone in the clinic had access to it. The list was organized by meeting date, and every Thursday we held a staff meeting. And the first agenda item was always the issues list. Anyone in the office could add an item. Then, during the meeting, we would review each and every one. And every idea that was put there went into one of three buckets. Bucket one, we decided not to make the change. Bucket two, this change needed to happen right away because it was creating a significant problem. In that case, we would implement the change within the week. And bucket three, it was a good idea, but it needed more development, more thinking, more process. And those became our quarterly projects. Someone was assigned ownership of that project. Usually leadership handled these because the rest of the team was patient-facing. Now, once the change was fully developed, we updated the standard operating procedures. Then we announced the change to the entire team before we implemented it. And the change would begin on a specific date and time. This meant everyone started doing things the same way at the exact same time. Now, the reason this matters is because operations should create clarity, not confusion. When processes are documented, new employees are easier to train. Mistakes will decrease. Patient experiences become consistent, and the clinic becomes much easier to scale. Operations done well create three powerful things in a clinic: predictability, accountability, and freedom. Freedom for the provider, freedom for leadership, and confidence for the team. Now, before we wrap up today, here's a simple exercise that you can try this week. I want you to write down the 5 most common workflows in your clinic. Start with the patient journey. How is the phone answered? How is a consultation scheduled? What happens when a patient checks in? What happens when labs are returned? And who owns each step? That's 5. Document 1 workflow this week. That's it. Just start with 1. Because operations don't become powerful overnight. They become powerful through consistent improvement. Now, in the next episode of this series, we're going to talk about the 3rd pillar of the Power Framework: workforce. Your staff is the team that actually delivers the experience your patients receive. And in many clinics, staff could either become the greatest driver of growth or the biggest source of stress. We're going to talk about how to build a team structure that supports both patient care and business growth. And if you're enjoying this series, do me a favor. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And as always, thank you so much for the work you're doing to help patients live healthier lives. All right, I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to Beyond Hormones, the business of wellness. I hope that you're walking away with fresh ideas and real strategies you can use to grow your practice with profit and purpose. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow the show so you never miss a conversation. And if something you heard today resonated with you, do me a favor, share this episode with a friend or a colleague. It's one of the best ways you can support the show, and it might be exactly what they need to hear right now. If you want even more tools and support, go ahead and head over to acceleratedmedicalpractices.com. Until next time, keep doing the work that matters. Your patients need you, and I am cheering you along every step of the way.